He planted them, Mom. My daughter, Maya, was staring at me from across a plastic table, her eyes hollowed out by pure fear. We were in a tiny, glass-walled room in the county services building, a place that smelled like stale coffee and desperation. He knew I was leaving, she whispered, her voice cracking. He smashed his own head on the corner of the desk, called 911, and said I attacked him. Then they found the pills in my purse. His pills. He planted them. My 5-year-old grandson Leo was somewhere in this building, and my son-in-law, a man I'd welcomed into my home, was in the next room, playing the perfect, grieving victim for the case manager. But that moment of total, systemic betrayal wasn't the beginning. It was just the final crack in a foundation that had been crumbling for years. The first sledgehammer swing to that foundation had come just 3 hours earlier. I was at my kitchen table, my glasses slipping down my nose, trying to make sense of a client's disastrous quarterly tax filings. The phone rang, an unknown number. Evelyn Hayes. The voice was flat, bureaucratic. This is she. This is James Davies, case manager with the Department of Family Services. I'm calling to inform you that a minor, Leo Croft, has been placed in emergency state custody. Your daughter, Maya Croft, has been detained following a domestic incident and is being held for evaluation due to child endangerment. The words didn't make sense. Child endangerment, state custody. It was like he was speaking a foreign language. The spreadsheet on my laptop blurred. I gripped the edge of the table. There's been a mistake, I stammered. Ma'am, the child is safe. The police report is clear. You can come to our downtown office if you have questions. The line clicked. I don't remember the drive. I just remember the screech of my own tires as I cut someone off, and the prayer in my head, over and over. Let this be a mistake. Let this be a mistake. The county services building was one of those squat, gray 1,972nd structures that feels hopeless by design. The waiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. The fluorescent lights buzzed, a high-pitched, anxious sound that got right under my skin. A young mother in the corner was crying quietly into her phone. I ran to the front desk, but the woman behind the glass wouldn't look up. You'll have to take a number, ma'am. I'm here about my grandson, Leo Croft, I said, my voice too loud. That's when I saw him. Not in the waiting room with the rest of us. He was behind the counter, in the main office area, leaning casually against a metal file cabinet as if he owned the place. My son-in-law, Ben, he was talking to a man in a rumpled shirt and a cheap tie, Mr. Davies, and Ben was putting on a performance. His expensive tech startup logo polo shirt was rumpled, his hair artfully mussed. He looked like the picture of the anguished, successful father pushed to his limit. And on his forehead, so perfectly placed it looked like a prop, was a small, neat cut with a single butterfly bandage. I froze, and his smooth baritone voice carried across the room. I'm so worried about her, Jim, he said, shaking his head. Davies nodded, his face a mask of sympathy. She's been erratic for weeks. I finally told her I was consulting a lawyer, just to protect Leo, you understand. And she just snapped, threw a crystal paperweight right at my head, screaming, in front of Leo. Davies put a comforting hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, Ben. We'll get her the help she needs. And we'll get Leo settled. The rage that hit me was so pure it was almost blinding. I found my voice. Ben. My voice cut through the buzzing lights. Ben's anguished face didn't just fall, it vanished. For one split second, I saw his true expression, cold, reptilian annoyance. He had been interrupted. Davies, the case manager, immediately stepped in front of him, a human shield. Ma'am, you'll have to wait your turn. This is a private matter. I am Evelyn Hayes, I said, pushing past him. I am Maya's mother. Where is my daughter? Where is my grandson? Davies looked at me like I was a piece of trash he had to sweep up. His eyes raked over my simple blouse, my discount rack slacks. I wasn't in an Armani suit. I wasn't a pillar of the community like Ben. Ma'am, please sit down, he said, his voice hard. Mr. Croft is the primary parent, and he's handling this. We have your daughter in a holding room for evaluation. You are not a party to this. Not a party? The words echoed in my head. I'm the one who paid for the moving truck. I'm the one who co-signed her first apartment. I'm the one who... I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. Arguing here in front of him was exactly what Ben wanted. It would just be more proof of our family's instability. I sat. The plastic chair was cold. I watched the clock on the wall. Every tick was a hammer blow. 10, 17, 10, 18. I watched Davies laugh at something Ben said. I watched Ben check his $5,000 watch. An hour passed. An entire lifetime. Finally, Davies called my name. You can see her, 5 minutes. She's not stable. He led me to that small, glass-walled room. And that's when I saw her. My daughter. My brilliant, funny Maya, who had graduated with honors. She was huddled in a plastic chair, looking small and gray, her face scrubbed raw from crying. Mom, she whispered. She didn't even have the energy to get up. He planted them, Mom. Those were the first words out of her mouth, the ones that had echoed in my mind ever since. He knew I was leaving, she whispered, her voice cracking. We were in that sterile room, the one that smelled like fear. He found the escape account I opened. She told me everything. The argument wasn't about a lawyer, it was because he'd found the bank statement for the account I had helped her open. He'd cornered her in the office, called her a thieving bitch. She'd grabbed a heavy textbook, not a paperweight, a book to keep him back. And then, she said, his entire face changed. He smiled. You're done, Maya, he'd said, his voice calm. He took a step back, looked at the sharp corner of his expensive oak desk, and smashed his own head against it. A clean, deliberate motion. Then, he calmly dialed 911. He told the dispatcher I attacked him, she sobbed. And while they were on the way, he went to our bathroom, took out his bottle of anxiety pills, the ones he takes to handle the stress of his startup, and dumped them in my purse. He smiled the whole time. He hadn't just framed her. He had scripted it. And as she whispered, he found the escape account, Mom. The money. It's all gone. The floor didn't just drop out. It evaporated. The word money sent me spinning 2 months back. The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. I wasn't in the CPS office anymore. I was at the sterile blue and white counter of my local Bank of America, sitting across from a teller who looked like he was still in high school. I was filling out a withdrawal slip for $20,000. It wasn't play money. It was my life. 30 years of me, Evelyn Hayes, forensic auditor, socking away bits and pieces from every paycheck, my what-if fund. My retire before I'm 70 fund. The memory shifted. I was in my 10-year-old Honda, parked in the sprawling, chaotic parking lot of a Costco. I'd insisted we meet there because Maya was terrified. Ben was tracking her car, her phone, her thoughts. I handed her the thick, padded manila envelope. The cash was heavy. He tracks every card, every transfer. I'd told her, my voice firm. This is untraceable. This is your get-out money for you and Leo. You find a new apartment. Don't tell me where. Just go. Be free. She'd cried, her hands shaking as she held the envelope. Mom, I can't. This is your retirement. I pushed it back into her hands. Freedom is a better retirement, honey. Now go. The flashback dissolved. I was back in the glass room, the smell of disinfectant sharp in my nose. That money, my 30 years of sacrifice, my freedom, it wasn't just gone. Ben had found it. He had taken it. He had stolen our one chance at escape and was now, at this very moment, probably using it to pay the high-powered lawyer who would help him take my grandson. I looked at Maya's broken face. The fear, the shame, and something inside me shifted. The panic, the grief. They didn't disappear. They crystallized. They turned from a hot, messy fog into a cold, hard diamond. Ben had called me ma'am. Davies had called me not a party. They both thought I was just some over-emotional old woman. They thought they had won. They forgot what I did for a living. They forgot that for 30 years my entire life has been about one thing, finding the lie in the numbers. And Ben. Ben was just a very, very big lie. I stood up from the plastic chair. Maya looked at me, her eyes wide with a new kind of fear. Mom, what are you doing? I'm going to get my grandson, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. It was flat, cold. It was the voice I used at a deposition. I walked out of the small, glass-walled room. The buzz of the fluorescent lights seemed louder now. Ben was still at Davy's desk, but he wasn't leaning anymore. He was sitting in Davy's guest chair, sipping a coffee from a paper cup, as if he were at a friendly meeting. He looked up as I approached, his face a perfect mask of concern and pity. "Evelyn," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "I'm so sorry you have to see her like this. I tried to get her help. I really did." I didn't look at him. I focused on the man who had the power. Davies. He looked up, annoyed at being interrupted again. "Mr. Davies," I said, "I need to see the incident report." Davies sighed, a put-upon, bureaucratic sound. "Ma'am, as I told you, this is a confidential file. You are not a party to. You are holding my daughter on felony charges of child endangerment and assault," I said, cutting him off. The words were sharp, precise. "I am her mother. I have a right to see the complaint filed against her. Or is your official procedure to deny a family member access to the charging documents? Because my next call will be to a lawyer, and the first thing I'll have them ask for is this department's written policy on that." Davy's eyes narrowed. He hated me. I wasn't the crying, hysterical woman he'd expected. I was a problem. Ben scoffed. "Evelyn, threatening these people won't." "Mr. Davies," I asked again, holding his gaze. He let out an angry breath. "Fine." He clicked his mouse a few times, a printer in the back whirred to life, and he ripped a single page from it. He slapped it on the counter, holding it down with his finger, as if he was afraid I'd steal it. "Here. It's redacted. It won't change anything." I picked up the paper. It was warm from the printer. Ben was still talking. "She's just going to confuse herself, Jim. She gets fixated on details. It's part of the—" I tuned him out. I wasn't a mother reading a tragedy. I was an auditor opening a new file. My eyes scanned the boxes, the official-looking headers. I wasn't reading the words "the alleged this" and "suspect" stated that. That was the story, the noise. I was reading the data, the numbers, the things that can't lie. Incident location, 1245 Willow Creek Doctor Reporting Officer M. Taggart. Time of 911. Call, 2217. Time of officer arrival, 2224. And then, at the bottom, in the witness statement section, witness, Benjamin Croft, husband. Statement taken by J. Davies, CPS. Time of statement, 2215. I read it twice, then a third time just to be sure. A small, cold smile touched my lips. I looked up. Ben was still smirking, that look of tolerant, patient suffering on his face. "This timestamp is wrong," I said. Davies, who had started typing on his computer, looked up, irritated. "What?" "This timestamp." I placed the paper on his desk. "It's wrong." He barely glanced at it. "It's a typo, ma'am. A clerical error. Happens all the time." "No," I said, my voice still quiet, still flat. I tapped the paper with my finger. "The police report states the 911 call was logged at 10:17 p.m. I tapped the second number. "You have Ben's official sworn witness statement here, time-stamped at 10:15 p.m. I let the silence hang in the air. Davy's face went blank. He was rereading the numbers, the math clicking into place. Ben's smirk wavered. "What are you talking about?" I turned to him. "How did you give Mr. Davies your official statement? Before you even called the police, Ben?" The color drained from Davies' face. He knew exactly what I was implying. That this wasn't a response to an incident. It was a premeditated event. That he and Ben had spoken before the 911 call. That he was a participant, not a case manager. "Now that's just a mistake," Davies stammered. Ben, seeing his ally falter, jumped in. He stood up, all 6'2" of him, trying to use his physical presence to intimidate. "Look, Jim," he said, forcing a laugh. "This is exactly the kind of unhinged, nitpicking behavior I've been dealing with for months. It's obviously a typo." He turned to me, his voice dropping into that familiar, condescending tone. The one I'd heard him use on Maya at Thanksgiving when she overcooked the green beans. "Evelyn, I know you're upset, but you're just a retired bookkeeper." Bookkeeper. The word hung in the air. I thought about the 3-day, non-stop audit I'd led that uncovered a $4.2 million embezzlement scheme inside a national logistics company. A fraud that 3 different Big Four accounting firms had missed. I thought about the CEO who'd called me just a numbers girl in a boardroom full of men, right before I showed the board the flowchart that led from a shell corporation in Delaware directly to his son's trust fund. Just a bookkeeper. Ben continued. You don't understand procedure. You don't understand how these departments work. You're in his building. He gestured to Davies. You have no power here. I'm on the board of the Children's Fund. I know how this works. You're just making things worse for Maya. Now why don't you go sit down and let the professionals handle this? He smiled. He thought he'd won. He'd put the little old lady in her place. I let the insult land. I let it settle in the quiet, buzzing air. I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at Davies, who was still staring at the damning timestamp on the paper. A typo, I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. Understood. Then you won't mind me seeing the other evidence you've collected. The pills, for instance. The ones you found in her purse. Ben's smirk was so smug it was almost a caricature. Evelyn, let it go. You're grasping at straws. He leaned in, lowering his voice to a confidential, man-to-man tone for Davies. She's an addict, Jim. It's tragic, but it's the truth. She'd say anything. Addict. He was so proud of his plan. The artful cut on his head. The typo in the police report. And now, the finishing touch. A bottle of pills. A neat, tidy package to lock my daughter away, discredit her, and leave him with my grandson. And the money. He thought he was so clever, but he'd gotten greedy. He didn't just plant the pills. He took the money. My money. The buzzing fluorescent light of the CPS office, the one that had been drilling into my skull, suddenly faded. It was replaced by the identical sterile buzz of the lights in my local Bank of America branch, 2 months ago. I was standing at the counter, facing a teller young enough to be my grandson. His name tag said, Tyler. Just the usual IRA deposit today, Mrs. Hayes, he asked, smiling. I slid the withdrawal slip across the cold laminate counter. My hand wasn't shaking, not even a little. Tyler's smile froze. His eyes went from the slip to my face and back again. $20,000, he read, his voice a whisper. In cash. That's right, Tyler. Mrs. Hayes. That's a significant portion of your retirement fund. Are you sure? For any cash withdrawal over $10,000, I have to fill out federal paperwork, and I'm aware of the form 8,300, I said, my voice calm, and I am sure this wasn't just money. It was my life. It was 30 years of me, Evelyn Hayes, forensic auditor, socking away 10% of every paycheck, no matter what. It was my what-if fund. It was my I don't need a man fund. It was my walk-away money, earned over 3 decades of balancing the books for men who, just like Ben, thought I was just a bookkeeper. That money was my independence. It was my Declaration of Independence, written in compound interest. Tyler disappeared into the back. I waited. I heard the whirring, rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack of the cash-counting machine. Each sound felt like a piece of my carefully built future being shredded. This wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. He came back 10 minutes later. He didn't say a word, just slid 2 thick paper-banded bricks of $100 bills and a plain 9x12 manila envelope across the counter. That envelope was everything. I didn't go straight to her. I drove to the most anonymous, chaotic, and aggressively American place I could think of, the Costco parking lot on a Saturday. It was a sea of gray minivans, oversized shopping carts, and people walking out with 50-inch flat-screen TVs. The air smelled like cheap pizza and car exhaust. Maya pulled in next to my 10-year-old Honda, her hands visibly shaking on the steering wheel. She was checking her rearview mirror, her whole body coiled like a frightened animal. "Mom, are you sure?" she whispered. Her window cracked just an inch. "He tracks everything. My credit cards, the bank transfers. He even has an app that tracks my Starbucks purchases. He'll know." "He won't know this," I said. I put the manila envelope on her passenger seat. It landed with a soft, heavy thud. It felt like a brick. "This is untraceable," I said. "This is your get-out money. This is for you and Leo. You find a new apartment, somewhere he'd never look. You get a new phone. You start a new life, don't tell me where, just go." She stared at it, and then she just broke. She dropped her head to the steering wheel and sobbed, a raw, ragged sound that cut right through me. "Mom, I can't," she cried, her voice muffled. This is your retirement. This is your future. This is everything you worked for. I reached through the window and put my hand on her shoulder. Freedom is a better retirement, honey, I told her. You and Leo being safe. That's my future. Now go. The image of her tear-streaked, terrified, grateful face vanished, snapped away like a rubber band. I was back in the CPS office. The air was still stale. The lights were still buzzing, and Ben was still talking. And as I said, he was saying to Davies, who was nodding along like a puppet, "She's an addict. She's delusional. She probably stole that money from you, Evelyn. I wouldn't be surprised. She'd say anything to cover her tracks." The audacity. The sheer, bottomless audacity of it. He didn't just frame her. He didn't just steal my life savings. He was using my own sacrifice as the final nail in her coffin. I looked at Davies, who was already turning back to his computer, case closed. I looked at Ben, who had his arms crossed, triumphant. He thought the pills were the end of the story. He thought he had his alibi. He forgot who I was. "You're right," I said. Ben's head snapped back to me, surprised I'd agreed with him. Davies stopped typing. "Let's talk about those pills." And Ben. Ben was just a very, very big lie. I stood up. My legs felt steady. The fog of panic and grief that had suffocated me was gone, replaced by the cold, sharp clarity of an audit. I could see Maya watching me through the glass of that little room, her face pale, her hands pressed to her mouth. I gave her one short look. A look I hoped said, "Stay quiet. I'm working." I walked back to the counter, my sensible shoes making no sound on the worn linoleum. Ben and Davies were still murmuring. Ben was laughing at something Davies had said, his head tilted back, all perfect white teeth. The sound of it, so casual and confident in this place of misery, was like gasoline on a fire. They stopped when they saw me. Ben's face snapped back into its mask of patient, long-suffering concern. "Evelyn, please," he said, his voice a soft, condescending purr. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. For Maya's sake. Go home. We'll call you when." "I need to see the incident report," I said. The words just hung in the air. Davies scowled, the concerned professional vanishing, replaced by the petty tyrant. "Ma'am, as I have told you, this is a confidential file. You are not a party to. You are holding my daughter on felony charges of child endangerment and assault." I cut him off. My voice was low, but it cut through the buzzing of the lights. "I am her mother. I have a right to see the complaint filed against her. Or is your official procedure to deny a family member access to the charging documents? Because my next call will be to a lawyer, and the first thing I'll have them ask for is this department's written policy on that. I'm sure the local news would be very interested in that policy too." Davies' eyes narrowed. He hated me. I wasn't the crying, hysterical woman he'd expected. I was a problem. Ben scoffed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Evelyn, what are you going to do, audit it? It's a police report, not a balance sheet. You're just a retired bookkeeper." Bookkeeper. The word hung in the air, thick and heavy. He'd said it so easily, so dismissively. The same way the CEO of a national logistics company had called me just a numbers girl in a boardroom full of men right before I put up the flowchart showing how he'd siphoned $2 million into a shell corporation in Delaware. He and 3 different Big Four accounting firms had missed it for years, but the bookkeeper found it in 3 days. I didn't say any of that. I just held Davies' gaze. Ben continued, gesturing around the office. "You don't understand procedure. You don't understand how these departments work. You're in his building." He pointed to Davies. "You have no power here. I'm on the board of the Children's Fund, Evelyn. I know how this works. You're just making things worse." Davies, emboldened by his powerful friend, let out an angry sigh. "Fine." He clicked his mouse, the printer whirred, and he ripped a single page from it. He slapped it on the counter, holding it down with his finger. "Here, it's redacted. It won't change anything." I picked up the paper. It was still warm. Ben was still smirking. I tuned him out. I wasn't a mother reading a tragedy. I was an auditor opening a new file. My eyes scanned the boxes, the official-looking headers. I wasn't reading the words "the alleged this" and "suspect stated that." That was the story, the noise. I was reading the data, the numbers, the things that can't lie. Incident location: 1,245 Willow Creek. Doctor Reporting Officer M. Taggart. Time of 911. Call 2217. Time of officer arrival 2224. And then, at the bottom, in the witness statement section, witness, Benjamin Croft, husband, statement taken by J. Davies, CPS. Time of statement 2215. I read it twice, then a third time, just to be sure. My heart didn't pound, my hands didn't shake. I just felt cold. A small smile touched my lips. I looked up. Ben was still smirking, that look of tolerant, patient suffering on his face. "This timestamp is wrong," I said. Davies, who had started typing on his computer, looked up, irritated. "What? This timestamp?" I placed the paper back on his desk. I tapped the number. "It's wrong." He barely glanced at it. "It's a typo, ma'am. A clerical error. Happens all the time." "No," I said, my voice still quiet, still flat. I tapped the police report's timestamp. The police report states the 911 call was logged at 10:17 p.m. I tapped the second number, the one at the bottom. "You have Ben's official sworn witness statement here, time-stamped at 10:15 p.m. I let the silence stretch. Davies' face went blank. He was rereading the numbers, the math clicking slowly, horribly into place. Ben's smirk wavered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. What are you talking about?" I turned my full attention to him. "How did you give Mr. Davies your official statement? Before you even called the police, Ben?" The color drained from Davies' face. He knew exactly what I was implying, that this wasn't a response to an incident, it was a premeditated event. That he and Ben had spoken before the 911 call, that he was a participant, not a case manager. "Now that's just a mistake," Davies stammered, his eyes darting between me and Ben. Ben, seeing his ally falter, jumped in. It's obviously a typo. What are you trying to say?" "A typo," I said, nodding as if considering it. "Understood. Then you won't mind me seeing the other evidence you've collected. The pills, for instance. The ones you found in her purse." Ben forced a laugh. It sounded like a dog barking. "Evelyn, this is insane. What are you getting at? You think what?" "That I planted them." He turned to Davies, playing the victim again. "See what I mean, Jim? Delusional. She's reaching." "I'm not reaching, Ben," I said. I pulled my phone from my purse. The screen was cracked. The case was a cheap $5 model from a drugstore checkout lane. It wasn't a sleek new device like his. It was a tool. "I'm just checking our family plan." Ben's face didn't move. But his eyes went perfectly, completely still. "What?" Davies asked, clearly lost. "Our CVS family plan," I said, my voice conversational, as if I were discussing grocery coupons. "Maya and I have been on one for years. It's just easier, you know? All the prescriptions under one account. I get alerts." I tapped the screen, my thumb scrolling. The app was slow to load. The little spinning circle felt like an eternity. Ben didn't say a word. He just watched my phone. "Ah," I said. "Here it is." I turned the phone around so Davies could see the screen. "You're right, Ben. There's been a lot of erratic behavior lately, a lot of anxiety. So much so that a prescription for, a 90-day supply of high-dosage anxiety medication was filled just 3 days ago." I looked up, first at Davies, then at Ben. "The prescription," I said, my voice dropping, "was filled for you, Ben, under your name, from your doctor." I leaned in, and for the first time, I let the cold, quiet rage I felt show in my eyes. "So my daughter is being held for child endangerment based on a bottle of pills that you," I looked at Ben, "filled for yourself." I looked at Davies. "In a report that was written before the crime was even committed. Am I getting that right, Mr. Davies? Or am I? What was it? Just a retired bookkeeper who doesn't understand procedure?" Davies was white. He was a man watching his career, his pension, and his freedom evaporate in real time. He was looking at the phone. He was looking at Ben. And for the first time, he wasn't looking at Ben as a pillar of the community. He was looking at him as an accomplice. Ben's mask didn't just crack, it shattered. "You bitch!" he hissed. The anguished father was gone, replaced by the cornered reptilian thing I'd always known was underneath. You have no idea what you're doing." I have connections." I'm on the board. I will destroy you. I'll have your license. My license? I asked. For what, Ben? Bookkeeping? You've already made your opinion on that clear. That's illegal, Davies stammered, pointing a shaky finger at my phone. You can't just... That's private medical information. That's a HIPAA violation. Is it? I asked, genuinely curious. It's my family plan. I'm the primary account holder. I'm just checking my own pharmacy receipts. But you, Mr. Davies, taking a man's word, fabricating a timestamp on a legal document, and processing a child endangerment claim without even verifying the evidence? That seems like a bit more than a procedural error to me. That seems criminal. I turned my back on Ben. He was irrelevant now. He was just a fraud. Davies was the one who held the keys. So, I said, putting my phone back in my purse, here's what I think. I think you're going to go back to that evidence locker. You're going to discover that the pills match the prescription on my phone, and then you are going to realize that your entire case is based on planted evidence and a fraudulent report. I paused. Or, I can make a phone call. Not to a lawyer. Not yet. Ben smiled. He thought he'd won. He'd put the little old lady in her place. Just a retired bookkeeper. The insult hung in the air, thick and heavy. I let it sit. I let him enjoy his little moment of superiority. I thought about the 3-day, non-stop audit I'd led that uncovered a $4.2 million embezzlement scheme, a fraud that 3 different Big Four accounting firms had missed. I thought about the CEO who'd called me just a numbers girl in a boardroom full of men, right before I showed them the flowchart that led from a shell corporation in Delaware directly to his son's trust fund. Men like Ben always underestimated the bookkeeper. They thought the person balancing the books was just a secretary. They forgot, the person balancing the books is the only one who knows where all the bodies are buried. I took a slow breath. I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at Davies, who was visibly relaxing, convinced his pillar-of-the-community friend had handled the problem. You're right, Ben, I said. His head snapped back to me, surprised I'd agreed with him. Davies stopped typing. I don't understand procedure, I continued, my voice conversational. So you'll have to help me. Let's talk about the evidence you collected. The pills, for instance. The ones found in her purse. Davies stiffened. The pills were his ace in the hole. That's evidence, ma'am. It's in lockup. Of course it is, I said. But the report must specify what they are. An unlabeled bottle, as Maya told me. Or a labeled one? You'd need a specific prescription to claim she's an addict, wouldn't you? Ben forced a laugh. It sounded like a dog barking. Evelyn, this is insane. What are you getting at? You think what? That I planted them. He turned to Davies, playing the victim again. See what I mean, Jim? Delusional. She's reaching. I'm not reaching, Ben, I said. I pulled my phone from my purse. The screen was cracked. The case was a cheap $5 model from a drugstore checkout lane. It wasn't a sleek, new device like his. It was a tool. I'm just checking our family plan. Ben's face didn't move. But his eyes went perfectly, completely still. What? Davies asked, clearly lost. Our CVS family plan, I said, my voice as calm as if I were discussing grocery coupons. Maya and I have been on one for years. It's just easier, you know? All the prescriptions under one account. I get alerts. I tapped the screen, my thumb scrolling. The app was slow to load. The little spinning circle felt like an eternity. Ben didn't say a word. He just watched my phone. Ah, I said. Here it is. I turned the phone around so Davies could see the screen. You're right, Ben. There's been a lot of erratic behavior lately. A lot of anxiety. So much so that a prescription for, let's see, a 90-day supply of high-dosage anxiety medication was filled just 3 days ago. I looked up, first at Davies, then at Ben. The prescription, I said, my voice dropping, was filled for you, Ben. Under your name, from your doctor. I leaned in, and for the first time, I let the cold, quiet rage I felt show in my eyes. So my daughter is being held for child endangerment based on a bottle of pills that you, I looked at Ben, filled for yourself. I looked at Davies, in a report that was written before the crime was even committed. Am I getting that right, Mr. Davies? Or am I? What was it? Just a retired bookkeeper who doesn't understand procedure. Davy's face was a fascinating, terrible thing to watch. It was a rapid-fire progression of emotions: disbelief, then confusion, then a flush of angry red. He was a man who held all the cards, and I had just accused him of marking the deck. Ben, on the other hand, just looked annoyed. He still thought this was a sideshow. He still thought he was the smartest man in the room. "He's not going to answer you, Evelyn," Ben said, his voice dripping with condescension. You're obstructing. You're hysterical. Jim, just call security. Have her removed." Davies, desperate for any lifeline, seized on the idea. It was his last shred of authority. "He's right," he said, his voice a shaky imitation of command. "You're interfering in an active child welfare case. You have no authority here. I'm calling security." He reached for the black phone on his desk. "Go ahead," I said. My voice was so quiet it barely registered. He paused, his hand hovering over the receiver. "Call them," I continued, "and when they get here, you can explain case file 2187B to them." The name meant nothing to Ben. He actually rolled his eyes. "What is that, her bingo number?" "Jim, call them. This is ridiculous." "But Davies." Davies froze. His hand, the one reaching for the phone, snapped back like he'd touched a hot stove. His face didn't just go pale. It went the color of spoiled milk. A sickly, greenish white. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. Ben finally noticed. His smirk faltered. He looked from me to Davies and back again. "What? What is she talking about? What is that?" I stepped closer to the counter. I felt the institutional chill of the laminate under my palms. I wasn't a mother anymore. I wasn't a grandmother. I was a professional, and I was about to close an account. "You don't know," I asked Ben, my voice still light, still conversational. "But you're on the board. You know how this works. You should know the big cases." I turned my full attention to Davies. He looked like he was going to be sick, right there on his keyboard. "Case file 2187B, I said, my voice dropping, precise as a scalpel. "The investigation into this very department for misallocated funds and kickbacks from foster care providers. It was 3 years ago. You remember, don't you, Jim?" His throat worked, but he couldn't speak. He just stared, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. "It was a very complex audit," I continued, speaking slowly, letting every word land. "Someone had been burying shadow payments. Taking gifts, I think there was a fishing boat, if I remember, and season tickets to the stadium, to fast-track adoptions for certain pillars of the community, wealthy donors who didn't want to wait in line." Ben's face was now as pale as Davies. I don't know what you're—" "The city council thought it was a computer glitch," I said, ignoring Ben. "They hired an outside firm to find the bug. My firm. They sent me. The bookkeeper." I leaned in, lowering my voice so only the two of them could hear me. The buzzing of the lights seemed to fade into a dull roar. "And I'm the one who discovered you, Mr. Davies. You weren't a night shift case manager then, were you? You were the director. You had a corner office. And you were running a cash for kids scheme right under the city's nose. I'm the one who wrote the 80-page report. I'm the one who sat in a closed-door meeting with the district attorney and explained the money trail. I'm the reason you were demoted from director to this desk. The only reason you're not in prison is because you testified against the foster care agency, and the city wanted to avoid the scandal." I stood up straight. The silence in the office was absolute. Ben was frozen, his mouth agape. He looked at Davies, this man who was his insider, his friend, and was seeing him for what he was, a disgraced, small-time criminal who I, just a bookkeeper, had personally and professionally destroyed. Davies slowly, very slowly, sank into his cheap particle board office chair. He looked broken. He whispered. I didn't recognize you." "Of course you didn't," I said. "I was just a name on a report, a line item. Now." I leaned forward again, my voice hardening. "You have one chance to fix this. Not for me, for you. This is retaliation." Ben blurted out, finding his voice. She's blackmailing him." "Jim, you can't." "Am I asked. "Or am I the witness to your conspiracy? You, a pillar of the community. conspiring with a disgraced employee to file a fraudulent report with a provably false timestamp using planted evidence, all to kidnap a child and steal. What was it, Ben? $20,000. Ben's mouth snapped shut. Here is what is going to happen, I said, speaking directly to Davies. First, you are going to walk back to that little glass room, and you are going to release my daughter, Maya Croft. Second, you are going to bring my grandson Leo out here to his mother. And third, you are going to file this entire fraudulent, disgusting report as unfounded, citing insufficient evidence and clerical errors. You will then purge the file. Davies just stared at me. Or, I said, I will walk out that door, call the D.A.S. office. My cell phone has his personal number, by the way, from our last conversation, and I will have you charged with perjury, evidence tampering, and retaliation against a city auditor. And I will personally ensure that the scandal the city wanted to avoid 3 years ago will be on the front page of the Tribune tomorrow morning, with your picture right next to Ben's. I smiled. It was not a kind smile. What was it? Do I understand the procedure now, Mr. Davies? He didn't speak. He just nodded, a single spastic jerk of his head. He looked at Ben with eyes full of pure, unadulterated hatred, his friend, his pillar of the community, the man who had just cost him everything all over again. He stood up, his legs visibly shaking. I'll get the child, he whispered, and he turned and walked, not like a man in charge, but like a man on his way to the gallows. He walked away from the counter like a puppet with its strings cut, his shoulders hunched, his eyes vacant. He was a man who had just been professionally and personally executed. Ben was left standing alone in the middle of the office floor. The pillar of the community looked small. His expensive polo shirt seemed to hang off him. You can't, he stammered, his voice no longer smooth and confident. It was thin, reedy. This is coercion. You blackmailed him. I presented the facts, Ben. I didn't even bother to look at him. My eyes were on the door Davies had disappeared through, the one marked, Authorized Personnel Only. Something you seem to have a problem with. Ben lunged toward the counter, his hands gripping the edge. Jim! Davies! Get back here! We had a deal. I'm on the board, Jim. He looked at me, his face a mask of pure, unfiltered hatred. You think you're so smart, you old bookkeeper. I think you made a clerical error, I said, just as the authorized door buzzed open. Davies came out. He wasn't alone. He was holding my grandson Leo's hand, and right behind him, her face pale but her eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't seen in years, was Maya. Mom, she cried out. Gamma, Leo yelled, letting go of Davies' hand and running, his little sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. I didn't realize I was on my knees until I felt Leo's small arms wrapped tightly around my neck, his face buried in my shoulder. He smelled like crayons and apple juice. Maya fell to her knees with me, wrapping her arms around both of us, and we were just a heap on the cold, dirty floor. I held my family, my eyes squeezed shut. Leo, get away from her. Ben's voice was weak, pathetic. Leo just burrowed closer, his little hands gripping my shirt. I looked up. Davies was already back at his desk. He was typing, furiously. The sound of his keyboard was the only noise in the room, a frantic, percussive rhythm. Click-clack-clack-clack, D-E-L-E-T-E. Click-clack, D-E-L-E-T-E. He was typing, his eyes glued to the screen, like a man trying to defuse a bomb. He was erasing them, erasing the lie. Jim, you can't, Ben pleaded, his voice desperate. Jim, I'll be ruined. They'll find out. Davies stopped typing. He turned his chair, very slowly. You, he whispered, his voice hoarse with a new venomous hatred. You brought her here. He pointed a shaky finger at me, but his eyes were locked on Ben. With your problems, your mess. He looked at Ben with all the contempt of a man who has just lost everything. Get out. What? Get out of my office, before I have you arrested for filing a false report. Ben stared, his mouth open. He looked at me, holding my family. He looked at Davies, the man who had just destroyed him. He tried to muster one last glare of superiority, but it just looked sad. He turned, his expensive shoes scuffing the floor, and pushed the glass door open. He was gone. The silence that fell was heavy. It was just us, and Davies. Click, delete, he he finished. The printer whirred. He took a single sheet, stamped it with a heavy thud, UNFOUNDED, and signed his name. He didn't hand it to me. He just placed it on the counter, his eyes still on his screen. "The file is purged," he said, his voice dead. "Your daughter is free to go." I stood up, helping Maya to her feet. I picked up Leo, his weight solid and real in my arms. I took the paper. We walked out. We didn't run. We walked, past the other people in the waiting room, past the security guard who didn't even look up. We pushed open the main glass doors. The afternoon sun hit my face. It had never felt so warm. The afternoon sun hit my face, so bright and warm it was almost a shock. It had never felt so real. We didn't run. We walked. We pushed through the main glass doors of that gray, hopeless building, and the sound of the city, a distant siren, the rumble of a bus rushed in. I was holding Leo, his face still buried in my shoulder, his small, steady breathing a solid, real thing against my chest. Maya was at my side, her hand gripping the sleeve of my blouse so tightly her knuckles were white. We were almost to the elevator, the little down button glowing, when a voice called out, "Ma'am?" "Mrs. Hayes." We turned. A young woman, maybe 25, was running toward us from the office door. She was wearing a wrinkled blouse, and her ID badge was flipped backward. She was out of breath, and her eyes were wide, darting back toward the office as if she expected Davies to come storming out. I just, she said, her voice a terrified whisper. "I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry." I looked at her. She was one of the junior caseworkers I'd seen at a desk, the ones who wouldn't make eye contact. Mr. Davies," she stammered, "he told us to fast-track the removal. He called us an hour before the 911 call came in. He said, Mr. Croft was a pillar of the community, and that the mother, your daughter, was unstable, and to be prepared for a difficult retrieval. He had the removal order pre-signed." She was shaking. I'm new here, but I knew it felt wrong. The file was too perfect. It was all packaged and neat. Maya just stared at her, her face ashen. This young woman, this stranger, was confirming that her entire nightmare had been scripted. The caseworker took a deep, shuddering breath. "I'm quitting. I'm going to go clean out my desk. But before I do, I'll write a full statement, a real one, with the real times. Whatever you need. What he did. What they did. It's not right." She was the redemption. The one person in that whole corrupt office who remembered what her job was supposed to be. "Thank you," I said. It was all I could manage. She just nodded, her eyes filling with tears, and then she turned and hurried back toward the office, back to the lion's den. I pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. We stepped inside. As the doors slid shut, sealing us in the small, safe metal box, I looked at Maya. She was watching her reflection in the steel, as if seeing herself for the first time. The elevator started its smooth, quiet descent. I looked at my daughter. I looked at my grandson, now asleep in my arms. We were safe. But I wasn't finished. This whole nightmare. This was just defense. This was about getting them back. This was about proving the lie. I hadn't even started on the truth. Ben was gone. But he wasn't gone. He didn't just frame my daughter. He didn't just try to kidnap my grandson. He stole my retirement. He stole $20,000 in cash. He committed bank fraud. He committed theft. And he had no idea, not really, what he'd done. He thought he'd stolen from a bookkeeper. He forgot. I'm a forensic auditor, and I am very, very good at following the money. We got home to my home and I put Leo to bed. Maya sat at my kitchen table, the one I'd been doing my taxes at just hours before, and just stared. She was safe, but she was in shock. I made her tea. Then I went to my office. Ben had made 2 mistakes. His first was underestimating me. His second, and this was the fatal one, was being greedy. He didn't just steal my $20,000 in cash. He had to use it. Cash is messy. You can't buy a Tesla with it. You can't pay your mortgage with it. You have to put it in a bank. And Ben, arrogant and flush with his perfect victory, had done just that. He thought the cash was untraceable, but to trace it, I didn't need to follow the bills. I needed to follow him. I started where I always start: public records. Property, LLCs, corporate filings, Ben's startup, Croft Innovations, was registered as a simple LLC. But there was another one, filed 6 months ago. Croft Capital Partners. Interesting. A little more digging. I still had access to some professional-grade databases. I pulled its bank records. And there it was. 2 months ago, right after Maya had hidden the cash, a series of deposits. Not one big one. Oh no, he was too smart for that. He'd structured it. 4 deposits, each for $5,000, at 4 different branches over 2 weeks. All cash. All just under the $10,000 federal reporting limit. He was a classic amateur, and amateurs always get caught. But that $20,000 was just the beginning. It was the thread. I pulled on it. The Croft Capital Partners account wasn't just his account. It was his friends and family investment fund. And as I scrolled through the transaction history, my blood ran cold. He wasn't just an abuser. He was a predator. There were deposits from Dr. Patel, his dentist, for $50,000. There was a wire transfer from the Millers, an elderly couple from his church, for $150,000, their entire retirement, probably. There were a dozen others, small-time, local investors, his friends, his neighbors, people who believed in the pillar of the community. And the money out? Payments to his car lease? Transfers to his personal account? A down payment on a boat? He wasn't running a startup. He was running a con. A classic small-town Ponzi scheme, using my stolen $20,000 to plug a hole. I spent the next 3 days building the file. I created the flowcharts. I cross-referenced the dates. I highlighted the wire fraud. When I was done, I had an 18-page report that was clean, irrefutable, and absolutely devastating. I didn't send it to a lawyer. I sent it directly to an old friend in the white-collar crimes division of the U.S. Attorney's Office. 6 weeks later, the air was crisp, a bright autumn morning. Maya and I were standing across the street from the federal courthouse, holding paper cups of coffee. We just watched. Ben walked out the front doors. He wasn't the man from the CPS office. His assets had been frozen. His expensive, bespoke suits were gone, replaced by a cheap, off-the-rack polyester suit that pulled too tight at the shoulders. He looked thin. He was alone. No lawyer. No friends. And then they saw him. There he is. That's him. It wasn't me. It was a small crowd of people waiting on the steps, the other victims. Ben. It was Mrs. Miller, the woman from his church. She was small, frail, and she was using a walker, but her voice was pure iron. Where is our money, Ben? You told us it was for cancer research. You told us it was safe. Dr. Patel pushed through. You lied to me, Ben. You lied to all of us. That was my kids' college fund. They swarmed him, not violently, but with the suffocating weight of their betrayal. A local dentist, a high school teacher, the elderly couple, all the little people he'd charmed and conned. Ben backed up against a concrete pillar, his face pale, his eyes darting around, looking for an escape. It's a misunderstanding, he stammered. The market. It's just... Mr. Croft. A new voice, calm and official, cut through the noise. A detective in a suit stepped forward, badge in hand. Mr. Benjamin Croft? You're under arrest for multiple counts of wire fraud and securities fraud. We watched. We watched as they turned him around, put his hands behind his back, and snapped the handcuffs on. That crisp, metallic click carried all the way across the street. Maya let out a breath she'd been holding for 3 years. She didn't cheer, she didn't cry, she just watched. Ben's serial predation wasn't just domestic, it was financial. He didn't just try to destroy one family, he'd tried to destroy his entire community. He hadn't just been arrested because he was an abuser, he was arrested because he was a fraud. And that's a crime the system, unlike the one at the CPS office, is very, very good at punishing. The sound of those handcuffs snapping shut was the cleanest, most final sound I'd ever heard. It was the click of a lock finally turning, the thud of a heavy book closing after the last page. Maya let out a breath beside me, a breath she'd probably been holding for 3 years. She didn't cheer, she didn't cry, she just watched. As they put him in the car, he looked up, and his eyes scanned the street, desperate for an ally, a friendly face, someone. His eyes met mine. I didn't smile. I didn't scowl. I just held his gaze. I just was, the bookkeeper, watching her final column balance. He looked away first. The car pulled out, and he was gone. We didn't talk about it on the drive home. We didn't need to. That night was the first night in years I didn't wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart pounding. It was the first night in years Maya slept without nightmares. Life looks different now. It's 6 months later. We're in a new apartment. It's not a high-rise condo like Ben's, and it's not my quiet little house. It's a 2-bedroom rental on the 3rd floor, with huge windows that let in the afternoon sun. It's bright. The walls are a cheerful yellow that Maya picked out. Leo's drawings are taped all over the refrigerator, right next to Maya's new paralegal certification. She went back to school. She got a job at a small, all-female law firm. She's helping other women get their own unfounded stamps on false reports. I'm sitting at our new kitchen table. It's cheap, from a garage sale, but we painted it. I'm helping Leo with a puzzle of the United States. He's 5, and he's smart as a whip. He's arguing with me that a piece for Texas can't possibly be that big. Maya is in the kitchen, and she's singing. It's just a little hum, off-key, as she stirs a pot of spaghetti sauce. The smell of garlic and oregano fills the little apartment. It's been years since I've heard her sing. My $20,000. My retirement fund. It's mostly gone. The lawyers got some of it back from the fraud victims fund, but most of it, well, that was the price of freedom. It was the price of this moment. A price I'd pay again in a heartbeat. Because that money isn't lost. It's right here. It's in the sound of Maya humming. It's in the smell of the spaghetti sauce. It's in Leo finally finding a place for Texas. And Davies, the enabler? The young caseworker, true to her word, filed her statement. It turns out, when one person is brave enough to tell the truth, they're rarely alone for long. Her statement, combined with my old audit, was all the city needed to finally clean house. Davies wasn't just fired. He's facing his own perjury charges. It turns out the pillar of the community and the corrupt official is a story as old as time. Maya brings over 3 plates. She smiles at me, a real smile, one that reaches her eyes. "You're staring again, Mom," she says, her voice light. "Just thinking," I tell her. "I'm thinking about that night. Ben was so sure of himself. He was on the board. He knew how this all worked. He had connections. He was the insider. And I was just a retired bookkeeper. He was wrong. They tell you, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That is the biggest lie powerful people ever told to keep the rest of us quiet. That night, the insider system, the who you know club, it failed. It was corrupt. It was lazy. And it was wrong. What mattered was what you know. What mattered was the data. The timestamp on a report, the prescription on a pharmacy app, the case file number from an audit 3 years ago. Knowledge isn't just power, it's protection. It's a weapon. The truth is always there, always, buried in the numbers, hidden in the details nobody else wants to read. You just have to be willing to look. You have to be the person willing to do the work. You have to be the bookkeeper. My story is about finding the flaw in the report. It's about following the money. It's about knowing the truth when everyone else is listening to the lie. So let me ask you, if the world tries to tell you you're just a bookkeeper, or just a mother, or just a name on a file, would you have the courage to open that file and show them what you really know? If this story resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of competence and truth, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What part of Ben's plan, or his takedown, made you the most angry? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the hardest of times.